Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my good friend, the gentleman from Georgia, for yielding the customary 30 minutes to me. I rise obviously in opposition to the rule for consideration of H.R. 273 to eliminate the 2013 statutory pay adjustment for federal employees. I just heard my colleague from Georgia say that this is a good rule. But I've also heard him say what I agree with very frequently, and that is that this body should proceed toward regular order, allow the committee process to go forward in a meaningful way, to have hearings, and to let the will of the body be worked here in the people's house. I've also heard him talk about closed rules, and it's for that reason that I believe that this process is not a good process, because it is a closed rule, and it couldn't, in that sense, be good. There were no hearings. He talks about this 1 week, one bill. Why this week for federal employees? Last night I talked with 6 members of the American Federation of Government Employees, some of them older, some of them younger, and all of them agonizing as are federal employees around the country. But let me get to the point. The Republicans have decided that they want to continue in the same short-sighted and counterproductive campaign against federal employees that we saw in the last Congress, when they introduced this very same bill. In the 112th Congress, it passed the House and then went nowhere and accomplished absolutely nothing. I'm quite certain, and I'll bet, that it will face the same fate this time around. Just last week, the Rules Committee considered H.R. 444, the Require a Plan Act, which should have been called the Republicans Have No Plan Act. Instead of offering real solutions to the challenges facing our nation, my Republican colleagues continue to introduce do-nothing legislation that will do nothing to help the American people. Obviously, all of us know that we face an $85 billion sequestration cuts in a matter of weeks. These cuts were intended to be a fail-safe. They were supposed to be so unpalatable, so horrible for everyone that Congress would never allow them to go into effect. Yet instead of making sure that these massive cuts don't threaten the progress that we've made, my friends on the other side would rather play politics at the expense of the middle class and the working poor, underscore working poor. As the President put it in his State of the Union address, and I quote him, "Arbitrary deficit reduction is not an economic plan. Deficit reduction is a means to an end, not an end in and of itself. It is just one tool that will help us get our country back on the right track. You can't build a house with just a saw. Deficit reduction needs to be part of a comprehensive economic plan, one that will stimulate growth and create jobs. A serious economic plan is one that does not take pot shots at our economy and our nation's full faith and credit for political purposes. We must, in this people's house, move beyond politics and work to avoid a dangerous backslide in our nation's economic recovery. For the life of me, I can't even begin to understand why House Republicans continue to pick on federal employees. I mean, you know, it's as if the people that keep the Capitol clean, the police officers that keep us safe, the countless people that work right here on this Capitol complex do not deserve this paltry raise and to be picked on. They've already contributed. Federal employees, that's what my AFG friends were saying to me last night, $103 billion towards deficit reduction. Furthermore, federal employees and retirees have contributed $15 billion in savings over 10 years through an increased pension contribution. A 2-year federal pay freeze has been in effect since 2011 and will produce an additional $60 billion in savings. The reduction and delay of a 2013 pay increase included in the current continuing resolution will yield $28 billion in savings. At what point does enough, as my friend from Virginia said, become enough? What's more and puzzles me, and I asked the question of the scrivener of this bill last evening, is why aren't federal contractors who make twice as much as federal employees included in this pay freeze? He gave me some political fogging. I don't know what it was and don't care to even bother to try to remember. During the debate over the fiscal cliff, Republicans said that we shouldn't ask corporations and the wealthiest in our society to pay their fair share. And the reason that was put, this was a while back during the debate on the fiscal cliff, was if we tax the wealthy, they won't work as hard if they're taking home less money. Well, what about federal employees? And why is it that that logic does not apply here? It's incomprehensible that we find ourselves in this position. And, Mr. Speaker, if the federal government is not paying realistic salaries, then we can't expect to be able to provide for people to allow for themselves and their families to have a decent living. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that the federal workforce is smaller now than it was in 1988, an historic low compared to the size of the national population. There are fewer federal workers now than at any time during President Reagan's administration. Something has got to give. I reserve the balance of my time. Then, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as remains.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I really like and have great affection for my friend from Georgia. And I understand exactly what he just did with reference to the President's commission as appointed by Senator Simpson and Erskine Bowles. But the fount of wisdom with reference to what is required in order for this nation to right its ship doesn't emanate from just any one commission. And while this particular proposal may be lifted as an idea from the Simpson-Bowles Commission, I would urge my friend from Georgia to read the whole thing, which does contemplate shared sacrifice. And that's what I've tried to get across to my colleagues here in this institution. As a person that lived as a child during the Second World War, I saw what sacrifice meant. And I saw the people that did the sacrificing. And they did it together, different than us today. And that's why I think it's wrong to cherry pick and then use a sledgehammer against federal employees for something that is not likely to become the law of the land. It's a waste of time. And the only good thing that I have to say about the bill before us today is that it has zero chance of becoming law. I anxiously wait for my friends on the other side, particularly the leadership, to actually start considering legislation that will help, not hurt, the American people. Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment which would allow the House to vote on replacing the entire sequester for 2013 with savings from specific policies that reflect a balanced approach to reducing our national debt. There are only 6 legislative days left until the sequester hits. Now is the time to act. Smart government is not about sequesters It's about solutions. And it's time to work together for the American people. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert in the text of my amendment in the record, along with extraneous material, immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote no and defeat the previous question. I urge a no vote on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time with the final thought that we don't have that much time to waste, and we are wasting the American people's time.
Gentleman from Florida yields.